Picture standing on a shoreline, watching as the waves pull back farther than they ever have before, not just a few feet, but miles, as if the ocean itself is retreating in awe. Then, the ground beneath the water begins to rise, slowly at first, then with impossible force, until the seafloor breaches the surface, revealing landscapes lost to time. This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie, it's a real geological possibility, one that could rewrite everything we know about our planet's past. Welcome to the mystery of the day the ocean floor rose, tracing a submerged continent's return, a story that blurs the line between legend and science, between what we think we know and what might still be hiding beneath the waves. For centuries, explorers and scientists have whispered about lands swallowed by the sea, entire civilizations, forgotten kingdoms, even continents that vanished beneath the tides. But what if those stories weren't just myths? What if the Earth itself decided to give them back? The idea of submerged continents rising again isn't just fascinating, it's a window into the incredible forces that shape our world. We're talking about tectonic shifts so powerful they can lift the ocean floor like a curtain, exposing secrets buried for millions of years, and the implications are staggering. Could we find evidence of ancient human societies that thrived on these lost lands? Could the rocks and sediments tell us new stories about how our planet evolved? The answers might be closer than we think. This journey isn't just about geology, it's about rediscovery. It's about peering into the depths and realizing how much of our history is still waiting to be uncovered. From cutting-edge sonar mapping to the brave researchers diving into uncharted trenches, we're on the verge of revelations that could change textbooks forever. So come with us as we piece together the clues from cryptic sonar images to baffling ancient maps that seem to chart lands that shouldn't exist. By the end, you'll see the ocean not just as water, but as the keeper of Earth's greatest untold stories. The question is, are you ready to hear them? To understand how an entire continent could rise from the ocean floor, we first need to grasp what makes a submerged continent different from the seafloor around it. These aren't just sunken islands or underwater mountains, they're colossal landmasses, often the size of countries or even larger, with geological features that match those of continents we walk on today. Take Zealandia, for example. Stretching beneath the Pacific near New Zealand, this hidden continent is nearly 2 million square miles, almost half the size of Australia. Yet for millions of years, it's been almost entirely underwater, with only its highest peaks breaking the surface as the islands we know today. So how does something that massive disappear? The answer lies in Earth's restless crust. Tectonic plates, those giant slabs of rock beneath our feet, are constantly shifting, colliding, pulling apart, or sliding past one another. When a continent sits on a plate that's being dragged downward, it can slowly sink over millennia, drowned by rising seas or swallowed by subduction zones where one plate dives beneath another. But here's the twist: the same forces that send continents underwater can also resurrect them. Imagine Earth's crust as a giant, ever-changing puzzle. Sometimes a plate that's been sinking suddenly meets resistance, maybe from a buildup of molten rock below, or from the sheer weight of the landmass itself pushing back. When that happens, the crust can rebound, rising like a cork released underwater. That's not science fiction. We've seen it happen on smaller scales. After the last ice age, parts of Scandinavia and Canada began rising at rates of nearly half an inch per year as the weight of glaciers melted away. Now picture that same process, but magnified across an entire continent over millions of years. Then there's Doggerland, the lost world beneath the North Sea. Just 8,000 years ago, this was dry land, a sprawling plain connecting Britain to mainland Europe, home to Mesolithic hunters and roaming wildlife. Then rising seas swallowed it, leaving only traces in the sediment and scattered artifacts pulled up by fishermen. But if sea levels were to drop again, whether from shifting climate patterns or geological uplift, Doggerland could re-emerge, revealing a snapshot of prehistoric Europe frozen in time. The real game changer, though, is what these resurfaced lands could teach us. Buried beneath layers of silt and salt water, submerged continents hold clues to ancient climates, lost ecosystems, and even early human migrations we never knew existed. Every rock layer is a page in Earth's diary, and we're just beginning to learn how to read them. Legends of sunken civilizations have haunted human imagination for millennia, whispering across cultures separated by vast oceans. Plato's account of Atlantis, a mighty empire swallowed by the sea in a single day, might sound like fantasy, but consider this. Modern sonar scans have revealed underwater structures off the coasts of Spain and the Bahamas that eerily match his descriptions of massive concentric rings and sunken cities. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, indigenous Maori traditions speak of Te Reu e Moi, a submerged land their ancestors once inhabited. Over in India, ancient Tamil texts describe Kumarikandam, a lost continent said to have vanished beneath the waves tens of thousands of years ago. What's striking isn't just the similarity of these stories, it's their persistence. Cultures with no known contact share near-identical tales of lands sinking catastrophically, often blaming divine wrath or cosmic upheaval. But science offers another explanation. These could be garbled accounts of real geological disasters. When the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, melting glaciers triggered sea level rises of over 300 feet, enough to drown entire coastlines and islands. For early humans living near the shore, that wouldn't have felt like a slow change. It would have been a relentless invasion of water, swallowing homes and sacred sites within generations. Take the story of Wise, a legendary Breton city said to have been swallowed by the sea when its princess opened a forbidden gate. Folklore, perhaps, but archaeologists have found submerged stone circles and megaliths off the coast of Brittany, dating to the same era the legend describes. Or consider the Aboriginal stories of Australia's northwest, which tell of a time when the shoreline stretched far beyond its current limits. A detail backed by geological evidence of a vast, now drowned plain. The real revelation here isn't just that myths might contain truth, it's how they align with the very forces we've been exploring. When tectonic shifts or rising seas drag land underwater, they don't erase it completely. They bury it, leaving clues in sediment layers, fossilized trees, and even human artifacts. And if the ocean floor can rise again, as we've seen with Zealandia's slow ascent, then these legends might be more than just warnings. They could be prophecies or even invitations. After all, if the Earth can hide continents, it can also reveal them. The next time you hear an old tale about a drowned kingdom, ask yourself, could this be a memory waiting to resurface? Scientists don't just stumble upon submerged continents by accident, they piece them together like detectives, solving an ancient, watery cold case. The first clue often comes from something as unassuming as a rock pulled from the ocean floor. While most of the seabed is made of dense, dark basalt, the kind of rock that forms from cooled lava finding lighter, coarser granite is a dead giveaway. Granite is continental rock, the same stuff that makes up the mountains and plains we walk on. So when researchers dredge up granite fragments miles from any visible land, it's like finding a puzzle piece that doesn't belong to the ocean's picture. But rocks alone don't tell the full story. That's where sediment cores come in, long, cylindrical samples drilled from the seabed that act like tree rings for Earth's history. Each layer holds tiny time capsules, fossilized pollen from long-drowned forests, microscopic shells that reveal ancient water temperatures, even traces of volcanic ash from eruptions that darkened the skies millennia ago. In the case of Zealandia, cores showed layers of coal and sandstone, clear evidence of a landscape that was once dry, teeming with plants and rivers before it slipped beneath the waves. Then there's the game-changer, sonar mapping. Modern multi-beam sonar systems can paint a picture of the ocean floor in astonishing detail, revealing ridges, valleys, and even ancient riverbeds carved when the land was still above water. Off the coast of Norway, sonar uncovered a submerged canyon system so vast it dwarfs the Grand Canyon, proof that Europe's edge was once a dramatic, dry landscape. And in the Indian Ocean, scans have hinted at a sprawling, drowned microcontinent called Mauritius, its peaks now hidden under miles of water and sediment. Perhaps the most haunting clues come from fossils. In the North Sea, fishermen routinely dredge up mammoth bones and stone tools from Doggerland's vanished plains. Near the Bahamas, divers have found stalactites in underwater caves, formations that could only grow in open air, proving those caves were once dry land. And in the Mediterranean, researchers uncovered a Neanderthal skull fragment in a cave now accessible only by scuba gear, a stark reminder that our ancestors walked where fish now swim. These aren't just scattered curiosities, they're breadcrumbs leading to a staggering realization. The ocean isn't just hiding lost continents, it's preserving them in a geological deep freeze, waiting for us to decode their secrets. And with every core sample, every sonar sweep, we're not just uncovering the past, we're rewriting it. The Earth's crust is never truly still. It's a restless, shifting mosaic of tectonic plates, each one grinding against its neighbors in a slow but unstoppable dance. These plates don't just nudge past each other politely, they collide with enough force to buckle landscapes, dive beneath one another in subduction zones, or even snap back in catastrophic earthquakes. It's this very motion that can drag entire continents beneath the waves, or, under the right conditions, hoist them back into the light. Take the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake as a stark example. In mere minutes, the seafloor near Sumatra lurched upward by nearly 30 feet, triggering devastating tsunamis. But what if that same kind of force acted over a wider area or for a longer time? Geologists have documented submerged continental fragments like the Seychelles microcontinent that were once part of larger landmasses before tectonic rifting tore them away. If plates can pull continents apart, they can also push them back together. Subduction zones where one plate plunges beneath another are often the culprits behind vanishing land. But these same zones can also become engines of resurrection. When a sinking plate meets resistance, say, from a buildup of molten rock in the mantle, the pressure can reverse direction, thrusting the seafloor upward in a process called crustal rebound. We've seen this on a small scale in places like Alaska, where earthquakes have lifted shorelines by several feet in seconds. Now imagine that same energy applied across an entire continental shelf. The real wild card, superplumes, massive upwellings of superheated rock from deep within the mantle. These can bulge the crust upward like a blister, potentially lifting submerged land back to the surface over millions of years. Zealandia, that mostly drowned continent near New Zealand, is already rising at a measurable rate, its highest peaks creeping skyward as tectonic pressures shift. And then there's the curious case of the Kerguelen Plateau in the southern Indian Ocean, a submerged landmass the size of California that was once an island chain, now slowly resurfacing as volcanic activity reshapes the seafloor. What does this mean for the future? If history is any guide, the Earth's crust has a habit of recycling itself. The same forces that swallowed Doggerland or the Bering Land Bridge could one day reverse course, exhaling lost landscapes like secrets held too long underwater. The clock is ticking, not in human years, but in geological time, and when it strikes, the ocean might just give back what it took. Imagine a continent nearly the size of India, vast enough to span from New York to Los Angeles twice over, yet almost entirely invisible, its peaks and plains hidden beneath the Pacific's waves. This is Zealandia, Earth's 8th continent, though you won't find it on most maps. Lost beneath the ocean for 25 million years, it wasn't until 2017 that scientists finally confirmed its existence, not as a collection of islands or underwater mountains, but as a bona fide continent in its own right. And here's the twist: Zealandia might not stay submerged forever. What makes Zealandia so extraordinary isn't just its size, it's the story written in its rocks. Once part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana, it broke away around 85 million years ago, drifting into isolation like a geological castaway. Today, its highest points form the islands of New Zealand, while the rest 94% of its landmass lies beneath the sea, a ghostly mirror of the world above. Sonar maps reveal submerged mountain ranges that match New Zealand's southern Alps, valleys that once held rivers, and even stretches of fossilized forest preserved in the deep. It's as if the ocean pulled a veil over an entire world, freezing it in time. But Zealandia isn't just a relic, it's stirring. The Pacific Plate, the tectonic giant beneath it, is one of the most active on Earth, constantly shoving against neighboring plates with enough force to reshape coastlines. Some researchers believe that if this pressure continues, Zealandia could experience a gradual uplift, its seabed rising inch by inch over millennia. Others point to the region's volcanic activity, like the fiery birth of New Zealand's North Island volcanoes, as evidence that the continent's rebirth might already be underway. There's even a controversial theory that Zealandia's northern edge, known as the Lord Howe Rise, could emerge first, potentially creating new landmasses in the Pacific within the next few 100,000 years. The implications are staggering. If Zealandia resurfaces, it wouldn't just be a geological curiosity, it could rewrite the rules of biogeography. Submerged for so long, its ecosystems would be a time capsule, offering clues to how life adapts when continents vanish and reappear. And for indigenous Maori communities, whose oral traditions speak of Te Reu a Moi as a living ancestor, Zealandia's potential re-emergence isn't just science, it's a cultural reckoning, a chance to walk lands their ancestors only knew in legend. Yet the debate among scientists isn't about if Zealandia could rise, it's about how. Some argue that tectonic forces alone might not be enough, pointing to the continent's thin, stretched crust as a barrier to significant uplift. Others counter that climate change could play a role. As melting glaciers alter sea levels, the reduced weight on the ocean floor might trigger a rebound effect, lifting Zealandia like a cork. Whatever the mechanism, one thing is clear: this hidden continent is more than a scientific oddity. It's a living experiment in Earth's resilience, a reminder that even the most permanent-seeming landscapes are just chapters in a much longer story. And if the ocean gave Zealandia up once, who's to say it won't do so again? Beneath the churning waves of the North Sea lies a lost world, one that just 8,000 years ago was a thriving landscape of rolling hills, dense forests, and winding rivers. This was Doggerland, a bridge between what we now call Britain and mainland Europe, where Mesolithic hunters tracked deer through valleys that today shelter shipwrecks and oil pipelines. The evidence of their lives is startlingly tangible. Fishermen routinely haul up ancient antler tools, mammoth bones, and even flint arrowheads from the seafloor, as if the ocean is slowly spilling its secrets. But here's what's truly mind-bending: Doggerland's story might not end underwater. With climate change altering sea levels and tectonic forces constantly reshaping the planet, this drowned world could one day rise again. The clues to Doggerland's past are scattered like puzzle pieces across the seabed. Sonar scans reveal sunken river channels, some wider than the Thames, that once carried meltwater from retreating glaciers. Sediment cores contain pollen from oak and hazel forests, proving this wasn't just a cold, barren plain but a vibrant ecosystem. Most haunting are the human traces: a Neolithic antler hammer dredged up off the Dutch coast, a child's footprint preserved in ancient mud, even submerged campfires where families gathered millennia before Stonehenge was built. These aren't just artifacts, they're snapshots of a time when Europe's map looked utterly different, and the English Channel was merely a river valley. What makes Doggerland especially intriguing is its potential future. While Zealandia's resurgence would play out over geological ages, Doggerland's return could happen on a human timescale. Rising global temperatures are already melting polar ice, but counterintuitively, that might lower sea levels in the North Sea. Here's why: when ice sheets vanish, the land beneath them, like Scandinavia, rebounds upward, relieved of their crushing weight. This process, called isostatic adjustment, could lift the southern North Sea floor by inches per decade, slowly exposing Doggerland's drowned plains. Combine that with potential shifts in ocean currents or a new ice age altering sea levels, and suddenly, the idea of Doggerland resurfacing isn't just speculative, it's a testable hypothesis. Scientists aren't waiting passively to find out. Advanced 3D mapping projects like Europe's Lost Frontiers initiative are stitching together sonar data to recreate Doggerland's prehistoric terrain with startling precision. They've even identified likely settlement sites atop hidden hills now called the Dogger Banks, where ancient communities might have clustered near freshwater springs. If these areas were to re-emerge, archaeologists could walk in the literal footsteps of Europe's first inhabitants, uncovering tools, dwellings, and perhaps even art frozen in time beneath the silt. But the implications go far beyond archaeology. A resurgent Doggerland would rewrite Europe's geography, potentially reconnecting Britain to the continent physically as well as culturally. Imagine the political, ecological, and economic ripple effects: new coastlines, shipping routes upended, oil reserves suddenly accessible. For climate scientists, it would be a living lab to study how ecosystems repopulate land after millennia underwater. And for storytellers, it's a potent reminder that the ground beneath our feet is anything but permanent. The same forces that drowned Doggerland could resurrect it, turning legend into reality with a slow, geological sigh. The next time you gaze at the North Sea's grey waves, picture the forests beneath them, the rustling leaves, the campfire smoke, the footsteps of people who walked there when the world was younger. Doggerland isn't just a relic, it's a reminder that Earth's story is still being written, and sometimes the most astonishing chapters are the ones we thought were lost forever. Climate change isn't just reshaping coastlines, it's pulling back the ocean's curtain, revealing glimpses of landscapes we thought were lost forever. Take the Baltic Sea's eerie, ghost forests, where ancient tree stumps, preserved for centuries in icy waters, suddenly re-emerge after violent storms strip away layers of sand. These skeletal remains, some over 1,000 years old, are more than just curiosities. They're proof that sea levels and shorelines are in constant flux, and that the ocean's grip on submerged land isn't as permanent as it seems. Now, with glaciers melting at unprecedented rates and ocean currents shifting, we're left to wonder, could these small-scale revelations hint at something far grander? The connection between climate and geology is deeper than most realize. When ice sheets melt, they don't just add water to the oceans, they unleash a cascade of geological reactions. Picture a trampoline with a heavy weight suddenly removed. That's what happens to Earth's crust when glaciers vanish. The land, no longer crushed by billions of tons of ice, begins to rebound, a process called isostatic adjustment. In places like Scandinavia and Alaska, this rebound is already lifting shorelines by several millimeters each year. But here's where it gets fascinating. As some coasts rise, others sink. Warmer oceans expand, pushing sea levels higher in some regions while tectonic shifts or sediment compaction drag others down. It's a delicate dance between water and land, and right now, the music's tempo is speeding up. Then there's the wild card of ocean currents. The Gulf Stream, that mighty river of warm water threading the Atlantic, has been slowing for decades due to melting Arctic ice. If it weakens further, sea levels along the U.S. East Coast could surge, drowning low-lying areas. But in the North Sea, the opposite might occur. A slower Gulf Stream could reduce water pressure on the seabed, allowing submerged lands like Doggerland to inch closer to the surface. It's a paradox. Climate change might drown some coasts while resurrecting others. The Baltic's ghost forests offer a chilling preview. Those gnarled stumps didn't just appear by chance, they were uncovered because rising temperatures intensified storms, churning up sediments that had hidden them for centuries. If warming continues, similar forces could expose even more secrets. Imagine lost Viking settlements emerging from fjords as glaciers retreat, or prehistoric shorelines resurfacing in the Caribbean as shifting currents rearrange the sand. The ocean floor isn't a static museum, it's an active participant in Earth's story, and climate change is flipping the pages faster than we can read them. What does this mean for the future? If current trends hold, we might witness coastlines transforming within our lifetimes, not over millennia. Cities could sink, islands might vanish, but elsewhere, drowned forests or even entire plains could breathe air again. The key lies in understanding how climate and geology conspire. Every degree of warming, every melted glacier, every altered current is a thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry. And as the planet rewrites its own maps, we're left with a humbling thought. The ground beneath us, whether land or sea, has always been temporary. The real question isn't just what the ocean will take next, it's what it might give back. The ocean doesn't just hide lost continents, it guards entire cities, frozen in time beneath layers of silt and salt water. And thanks to modern underwater archaeology, we're finally learning how to listen to their stories. Take the ancient city of Heracleion off Egypt's coast, once a bustling Mediterranean port mentioned by Herodotus. For centuries, historians dismissed it as legend, until divers discovered its colossal statues, gold coins, and even a temple to the god Ammon, all preserved in stunning detail under 30 feet of water. Or consider Dwarka, India's mythical sunken kingdom said to belong to Lord Krishna. Marine archaeologists have uncovered stone anchors, pottery, and submerged walls that match descriptions from sacred texts, proving this wasn't just a parable. These aren't isolated finds. From Greece's Pavloptri, the world's oldest submerged city, to Japan's Yonaguni Monument, a sprawling, enigmatic structure some believe could rewrite Pacific history, the seafloor is littered with evidence that human civilization has been playing hide and seek with the ocean for millennia. What makes these discoveries possible isn't just luck, it's technology. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROV, act as underwater drones, probing depths too dangerous for human divers. Equipped with high-def cameras and robotic arms, they've recovered artifacts from shipwrecks like Antikythera's 2,000-year-old computer, a bronze device so advanced it predicted eclipses. Then there's LiDAR, a laser scanning system that can map the seafloor through layers of murky water, revealing hidden structures invisible to the naked eye. In the Caribbean, Lemuria uncovered a vast network of Maya roads and canals beneath Belize's coastline, proving entire chapters of Mesoamerican history are waiting underwater. And let's not forget sediment-penetrating sonar, which detects anomalies in the seabed like the rectangular foundations of buildings or the outlines of ancient harbors buried under centuries of mud. But here's the tantalizing question. If we're finding cities, what else might be down there? Imagine an Atlantis-scale discovery, not a single metropolis, but a continent's worth of ruins, complete with temples, farmlands, and road systems. The clues are already surfacing. Near Cuba, sonar images show symmetrical stone formations at depths of 2,000 feet, far below where sea levels stood during the last ice age. Off Malta, divers found megalithic temples submerged when the Mediterranean rose, their massive stone blocks eerily similar to those on land. And in the Baltic, a mysterious 60-meter-wide disc-shaped structure, nicknamed the Baltic Anomaly, continues to baffle scientists with its unnatural geometry. The real game-changer: collaboration. Archaeologists now work with geologists to pinpoint where lost lands might lie, using data from tectonic shifts and ancient sea level charts. Geneticists chime in too when DNA analysis revealed Native Americans share ancestry with Australasian populations. It sparked theories of a now-drowned Pacific land bridge. Even climate scientists contribute, modeling how coastlines changed as glaciers melted. Together, they're piecing together a map of Earth's forgotten neighborhoods. So the next time you see a wave crash ashore, remember, that water might be the world's best preservation fluid. Every artifact recovered, every ruin mapped, is a postcard from the past, one that could rewrite history books. And with technology advancing faster than ever, the next dive might not just uncover a city or a temple, but proof that an entire civilization once thrived where now there's only blue. The ocean's greatest secret isn't that it takes, it's that it remembers. Beneath the waves, the ocean floor holds more than just rocks and sediment. It cradles the remnants of entire ecosystems, frozen in time. Take the mammoth teeth and bones dredged up by North Sea fishermen, relics from when Doggerland was a windswept grassland teeming with life. These aren't random artifacts, they're biological breadcrumbs, proof that land now submerged once hosted creatures we associate with vast plains and dense forests. But fossils aren't the only clues. Isolated islands like Madagascar or the Galapagos harbor species found nowhere else, quirks of evolution that only make sense if their ancestors arrived via land bridges now drowned. The question isn't just what was lost, but what could return if the ocean ever gives these lands back. Consider the Channel Islands off California, home to dwarf mammoths that once roamed a now vanished coastal plain. Their shrunken size, a classic example of insular dwarfism, hints at how quickly evolution can reshape life when landmasses fragment. If a submerged continent like Zealandia were to rise, it wouldn't just expose fossil beds, it could revive evolutionary pathways interrupted millions of years ago. Imagine descendants of Zealandia's prehistoric moa birds, flightless giants related to ostriches, reclaiming forests that vanished beneath the waves. Or think of the bizarre, long-extinct Zealandia, a razor-beaked predator that stalked New Zealand's undergrowth. With their original habitats potentially resurfacing, could evolution pick up where it left off? The real wild card lies in the genetic time capsules hidden in the deep. Submerged peat bogs, like those off Australia's coast, preserve ancient DNA from plants and animals in oxygen-starved mud. Scientists have already resurrected genes from extinct species like the woolly mammoth using far less intact samples. If a rising continent unveiled pristine genetic material, say, from Zealandia's prehistoric tuatara reptiles or Doggerland's aurochs, it could revolutionize the extinction science. But the implications go beyond playing Jurassic Park. Ecosystems are intricate tapestries. Reintroducing lost species or their modern equivalents could kickstart entire food chains, turning barren seabeds into thriving biomass. Yet the most tantalizing evidence of past connections comes from living species separated by oceans. The tuatara, a reptile found only in New Zealand, shares ancestry with lizards in South America, a link that only makes sense if their ancestors crossed a since-sunken landmass. Similarly, lemurs in Madagascar and lorises in India trace back to a common ancestor that likely traversed a now-drowned continent called Mauritius. If these land bridges re-emerged, even partially, migrations could begin anew, blending species isolated for eons. Picture a world where continents aren't just geological puzzles, but living laboratories for evolution's greatest experiments. The ocean's depths don't just conceal lost land, they hold the blueprints of forgotten worlds. From fossilized forests to the DNA of creatures we've never seen, every discovery suggests that Earth's biological story is far from finished. And if the ground beneath the waves decides to rise again, it won't just reshape maps. It'll rewrite the book of life itself. Earth doesn't always move in slow motion. While most geological changes unfold over millennia, sometimes the planet rewrites its own maps in a single, violent spasm. Take the night of March 27, 1964, when the Great Alaska Earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in North America, jolted the seafloor upward by 36 feet in seconds. Overnight, coastlines became cliffs, harbors drained dry, and stretches of ocean floor were suddenly left gasping in open air. This wasn't gradual erosion or gentle uplift. It was the Earth's crust snapping like a rubber band, proving that catastrophic change isn't just possible, but etched into our planet's history. Now imagine that same force applied across an entire continental shelf. Could a single seismic event rip a lost landmass from the ocean's grip? The concept of catastrophic uplift might sound like something from a disaster movie, but the mechanics are firmly rooted in plate tectonics. When two tectonic plates lock together along a fault line, stress builds until the rock can't take the strain, then it ruptures, releasing energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear bombs. In subduction zones where one plate dives beneath another, these ruptures can thrust the seafloor upward in a matter of hours. Alaska's quake was just one example. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake lifted the seabed near Sumatra by 30 feet, while the 2011 Tohoku quake in Japan shifted entire sections of coastline. These aren't anomalies, they're reminders of how quickly the planet can reshape itself when pressure reaches a breaking point. What's startling is how these sudden shifts mirror ancient legends. Indigenous stories from the Pacific Northwest describe entire villages swallowed by the sea or thrust skyward during battles between thunderbirds and whales, oral traditions that geologists now suspect could encode memories of prehistoric megathrust earthquakes. Similarly, Maori accounts of lands tossed up like mats align with New Zealand's history of violent tectonic uplift. Even Plato's tale of Atlantis sinking in a single day and night takes on new weight when you consider Mediterranean fault lines capable of dropping or raising coastlines catastrophically. The line between myth and geology might be thinner than we thought. The real game changer, we're now identifying zones where catastrophic uplift could expose entire landmasses. The Sunda Shelf near Indonesia, for instance, is a sunken extension of Southeast Asia's continental plate, shallow enough that a major quake might lift vast areas above water. Then there's the Cascadia subduction zone off North America's west coast, a sleeping giant capable of magnitude 9 quakes that could rearrange the seabed in ways we can't yet predict. And let's not forget the Hikurangi margin near New Zealand, where the Pacific plate is grinding beneath Zealandia with enough force to trigger uplift measured in meters per event. But here's the twist: sudden resurfacing wouldn't just reveal land, it could unlock ecological time capsules. When Alaska's seafloor rose in 1964, marine biologists found intertidal species stranded in newly created tidal pools, their ecosystems abruptly rewired. Scale that up to a continental shelf, and you're looking at sunken forests exposed to sunlight for the first time in millennia, or freshwater aquifers bursting through cracked seabed, creating instant oases. The aftermath would be a goldmine for science, a chance to study how life rebounds when landscapes are reborn overnight. Of course, the human cost of such an event would be staggering. Coastal cities could flood or drain in minutes, tsunamis would ravage shorelines, and global shipping routes might need redrawing. But buried in that chaos could be an unprecedented opportunity: front row seats to watch a continent wake from its watery slumber. The ocean floor isn't just rising, it's waiting for the right moment to remind us how dynamic, how unpredictable, and how astonishingly alive our planet truly is. A sudden continental uplift wouldn't just rewrite maps, it would redraw the very concept of borders, economies, and power structures overnight. Picture the port of Rotterdam, Europe's busiest harbor, suddenly stranded miles inland as the North Sea floor rises, its docks and cranes left high and dry like beached whales. Or imagine Singapore, a global shipping hub built on reclaimed land, watching helplessly as new islands emerge to disrupt its carefully plotted trade routes. The chaos wouldn't stop at logistics. Nations might find themselves staring down unrecognizable coastlines, scrambling to claim freshly exposed land, or worse, fighting over it. When the Bering Land Bridge reconnected Asia and North America during the last ice age, it wasn't just a geological event, it was a migration superhighway that reshaped human history. A modern resurgence of lost continents could trigger similar upheavals, but with satellites, navies, and oil rigs in the mix, the legal quagmire alone would be staggering. Under current international law, a nation's territorial waters extend 200 nautical miles from its coastline. But what happens when that coastline suddenly gains 50 miles of fresh seabed? The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea never accounted for continents popping up like toast. Countries might rush to plant flags on newly exposed mineral-rich plateaus, echoing the 19th century scramble for Africa. And then there's the resource wars. Zealandia's submerged crust is suspected to hold vast deposits of rare earth metals, while Doggerland's ancient peat beds could become prime farmland if drained. The moment these lands breach the surface, the race to exploit them would make the gold rush look orderly, but the real curveball: climate refugees in reverse. As rising seas drown some coasts, resurfaced lands could become unexpected sanctuaries. Low-lying nations like the Maldives or Tuvalu, facing existential threats from ocean encroachment, might suddenly have new territories to colonize, if they can reach them before wealthier nations do. The irony is palpable. The same forces that displace millions could also offer salvation, turning ghost continents into lifelines. Yet this silver lining comes with thorns. Indigenous groups like New Zealand's Maori, who view Zealandia as ancestral land, could clash with governments over who controls the resurfaced earth. After all, if your oral traditions spoke of these lands for centuries, do modern borders still apply? The ripple effects would touch everything from military strategy to internet cables. Undersea fiber optic lines, the backbone of global communication, often trace shallow continental shelf zones that could become dry land, severing connections between continents. Naval bases might find their strategic harbors transformed into valleys, while newly formed straits could become choke points for 21st century piracy. And let's not forget the insurance industry, which would face trillions in claims from coastal businesses rendered obsolete overnight. Yet amid the chaos, there's a tantalizing opportunity. Resurfaced lands would be blank slates, free from the environmental damage of surface industrialization. Imagine declaring an entire continent a carbon-neutral reserve, or using its untouched ecosystems as benchmarks to restore ravaged environments elsewhere. The catch: humanity would have to cooperate on a scale never seen before. The ocean's greatest gift might not be land, but the chance to prove we can share it. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, a massive, terraced structure lurks beneath the waves, its sharp angles and perfect steps so precise that archaeologists have debated for decades whether it's a natural formation or the ruins of an ancient city. The Yonaguni Monument, as it's known, is just one of hundreds of underwater anomalies that challenge our understanding of history. If submerged continents were to rise, we wouldn't just be uncovering rocks and sediment, we'd be peeling back layers of time, potentially stumbling upon the footprints of civilizations that thrived when these lands were last above water. And the implications are staggering. What if the ruins waiting beneath the waves aren't just isolated outposts, but the remnants of sophisticated societies lost to rising seas? Consider the case of Dwarka, India's legendary sunken city. Ancient texts describe it as a dazzling metropolis with golden gates and towering temples, home to the god Krishna. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as myth until marine archaeologists discovered stone anchors, pottery, and even submerged walls matching the descriptions. Or take the Baltic Sea's Stonehenge of the sea, a circular arrangement of boulders sitting 60 feet underwater, perfectly aligned with celestial events. These aren't random oddities, they're echoes of human activity preserved in the ocean's depths like messages in a bottle. And if entire continents resurface, the scale of discovery could dwarf anything we've found so far. The real game changer lies in the timing. Many submerged structures, like Japan's Yonaguni or Cuba's underwater pyramids, sit at depths that were dry land during the last ice age, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower. That places their construction between 10 to 12,000 years ago, a period mainstream history often dismisses as primitive. But what if these sites are proof of advanced cultures that mastered engineering long before the pyramids of Egypt? Graham Hancock's controversial theory of a lost Ice Age civilization hinges on this very idea, suggesting that cataclysmic flooding at the end of the Ice Age erased an entire chapter of human innovation. If rising land exposes more Yonaguni-like structures, it could force us to rewrite the timeline of human progress. Yet skeptics argue that nature can mimic human handiwork. The rectangular blocks off the coast of Bimini, once hailed as the road to Atlantis, turned out to be naturally fractured beach-rock. Similarly, some of Yonaguni's steps may be the result of seismic activity splitting sandstone along fault lines. The debate underscores a critical challenge, distinguishing between geological quirks and genuine artifacts. But here's where emerging tech could tip the scales. Artificial intelligence now scans sonar data for patterns too subtle for the human eye, while chemical analysis can detect tool marks or fire pits invisible to cameras. If a continent rises, these tools could finally settle centuries-old arguments. Perhaps the most tantalizing clue lies in shared myths. Cultures from the Aztecs to the Aboriginal Australians tell of great floods that swallowed ancestral lands. The Greeks had Atlantis, the Welsh spoke of Cantre Gwaelod, a kingdom lost to the sea. Even the Bible's Noah likely drew from older Mesopotamian flood stories. Could these be garbled memories of real events, catastrophic sea level rises that drowned entire civilizations? If so, resurfaced lands might hold the evidence. Imagine uncovering a city with architecture matching Plato's descriptions, or artifacts bearing symbols from multiple ancient cultures, proving long-forgotten connections. The ocean has always been history's greatest vault, locking away secrets until the right moment. If the day comes when submerged continents rise, we won't just be geologists or archaeologists, we'll be detectives piecing together a mystery older than recorded time. And the verdict could change not just what we know about the past, but how we see our place in the story of Earth. After all, if entire societies once flourished where now there's only water, what does that say about the fragility of our own cities, our own civilizations? The ocean doesn't just hide lost lands, it holds up a mirror, forcing us to confront how easily the works of humanity can vanish beneath the waves. For countless generations, the ocean has been more than water and waves. It's been a sacred archive, guarding the memories of lands and peoples swallowed by time. Take the Maori concept of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland believed to lie beneath the Pacific's expanse. This isn't just folklore, it's a living thread connecting modern communities to a past they can't see but still feel in their bones. The idea that these lost lands might resurface isn't just a geological curiosity, it's a spiritual reckoning, one that could rewrite cultural identities as dramatically as it redraws coastlines. The Maori aren't alone in their reverence for drowned worlds. In India, the Tamil people speak of Kumari Kandam, a vast continent said to have once stretched from Madagascar to Australia, its temples and libraries now entombed under the Indian Ocean. For Tamil scholars and poets, Kumari Kandam isn't myth, it's a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can vanish, yet their legacy endures. Similarly, the Indigenous peoples of Australia's north share dreamtime stories of a time when the coastline extended far beyond its current reach, a narrative eerily confirmed by geological evidence of a sunken plain the size of California. These aren't just stories, they're maps, not of geography but of belonging. So what happens if science one day confirms what oral traditions have long whispered? For Indigenous communities, the return of a submerged homeland could be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it might validate ancestral knowledge marginalized by colonial histories, proving that their stories were never mere legends, but records of real events passed down through millennia. Imagine the power of watching your grandmother's tales echoed in the re-emergence of a sacred mountain or river. Yet there's also the risk of exploitation, of resurfaced lands becoming commodities for tourism or mining, stripped of their cultural weight. The tension is palpable. These lands are both spiritual homelands and potential battlegrounds over who gets to define their meaning. The ocean's role as a keeper of secrets runs deeper than physical landscapes. In Hawaiian tradition, the sea isn't just a place, it's an ancestor, a living entity with its own mana, or spiritual energy. The idea of disturbing its depths to reclaim lost lands raises profound ethical questions. Would lifting a continent from the waves be an act of restoration or a violation of natural order? For some Pacific Islanders, the answer lies in balance. The ocean gives and takes, and humanity's role is to listen, not dictate. Perhaps the most poignant question isn't whether these lands will rise, but how we'll honor them if they do. The rediscovery of Doggerland's ancient forests or Zealandia's buried peaks wouldn't just be a triumph of science, it'd be a call to responsibility. These aren't blank slates, but landscapes steeped in memory, where every rock and river might hold stories we've only begun to decipher. The ocean has kept its secrets long enough. If it decides to share them, the real challenge won't be exploring what resurfaces, but understanding how to carry its legacy forward with the reverence it deserves. Standing on the edge of a freshly risen continent would be like stepping onto another planet, one where the ground itself is still figuring out what it wants to be. The terrain wouldn't just be uneven, it could shift underfoot as sediments settle, as salt water drains from newly exposed rock, as hidden pockets of gas erupt without warning. Every footstep might trigger a mini landslide. Every drill sample could hit a brine reservoir left behind by the retreating ocean. And that's before factoring in the chemical chaos, salt corrosion eating away at equipment, toxic algae blooms flourishing in sunlit pools, even the risk of ancient methane deposits venting after millennia under pressure. Exploring these lands wouldn't just require gear, it would demand an entirely new playbook for survival. But here's where human ingenuity kicks in. Researchers are already prototyping solutions, like amphibious drones that can transition from mapping underwater ridges to crawling across cracked mudflats. In Norway, engineers have developed quake-proof mobile labs mounted on treads, designed to stabilize themselves the moment sensors detect ground tremors. And then there's the Mars connection, yes, really. NAS, a work on Martian soil stabilization, is being adapted for risen seabeds with polymers that bind loose sediment into walkable crusts. Even simple tricks, like using ground-penetrating radar to spot hidden sinkholes or coating tools with anti-salinity nanomaterials, could mean the difference between discovery and disaster. The real wild card, biology. Resurfaced lands could harbor extremophiles microbes that thrived in high-pressure darkness, now suddenly exposed to air and sunlight. Some might die instantly, others could mutate unpredictably, posing contamination risks. Yet these same organisms might hold revolutionary secrets, like enzymes that break down plastic or novel antibiotics evolved in isolation. The key lies in containment protocols borrowed from deep-sea vent research, where clean zone field labs prevent cross-contamination between ancient ecosystems and modern ones. And let's not forget the cultural minefield. A single archaeologist's bootprint could erase millennia-preserved footprints of the first humans to walk that land. That's why teams are testing non-invasive methods, like hovering LiDAR scanners mounted on silent drones or AI that reconstructs eroded artifacts from 3D scans. The goal isn't just to explore, but to preserve, because these landscapes aren't just scientific curiosities. They're fragile pages in Earth's diary, ones we can't afford to smudge. The irony is delicious. We're preparing to explore lands that haven't even fully emerged yet. But that's the thrill of it. Every risk, every unstable cliff face, every microbe we've never seen is matched by potential rewards that could redefine our past, our planet, even our future. The ocean spent millions of years hiding these secrets. Now it's our turn to listen carefully as they rise. A resurfaced continent isn't just a geological marvel. It's a treasure chest waiting to be cracked open. Imagine vast stretches of pristine land, untouched by industrial farming, potentially hiding some of the richest topsoil on the planet. Or picture newly exposed seabeds studded with rare earth metals crucial for everything from smartphones to electric car batteries. Then there's the oil. Offshore drilling already taps into submerged reserves, but a risen landmass could reveal entire hydrocarbon deposits suddenly accessible without deep-water rigs. The economic potential is staggering, but here's the catch. No one's drawn property lines on land that hasn't existed for millennia. The scramble for ownership would make the colonial era look orderly. Under current international law, nations can claim exclusive economic zones extending 200 nautical miles from their coastlines. But what happens when those coastlines bulge outward overnight? Countries bordering the newly risen land could suddenly find themselves neighbors, with overlapping claims sparking diplomatic firestorms. Take Zealandia. If sections of it emerged, Australia, New Zealand, and even distant France through its Pacific territories might all demand slices. And let's not forget the specter of corporate exploitation. Mining conglomerates and agribusinesses could lobby governments for access, turning a scientific wonder into a profit-driven free-for-all. The ripple effects would rewrite global trade. A resurfaced Doggerland in the North Sea might create new shipping shortcuts, bypassing crowded routes like the Suez Canal. Conversely, freshly exposed land could block critical passages, forcing cargo ships into costly detours. Meanwhile, nations lacking traditional resources could become overnight power players. Imagine a Pacific island nation discovering its territorial waters now sit atop a risen continent rich in cobalt or lithium metals essential for the green energy transition. The geopolitical chessboard wouldn't just shift, it could flip entirely, but the biggest wild card, the black market, before legal frameworks adjust, shadow economies would thrive. Illegal mining operations, unregulated fishing in newly formed lagoons, even smuggling routes through uncharted terrain, all could flourish in the chaos of transition. History shows us that gold rushes rarely benefit the little guy. When the Yukon's Klondike region opened in the 1890s, it wasn't prospectors who struck it rich, but merchants selling them overpriced shovels. A modern resource rush might follow the same script, with corporations and speculators cashing in while local ecosystems pay the price. Yet amid the frenzy, there's an opportunity to rewrite the rules. What if the first act wasn't exploitation, but preservation? A risen continent could become the world's largest natural laboratory, its untouched soils offering baseline data on pre-industrial ecosystems. Or it might serve as a testing ground for sustainable resource models. Think vertical farms powered by geothermal energy from the newly active crust. The ocean didn't just hide this land, it preserved it. The real question isn't what we can take from it, but whether we're wise enough to learn from it. The sudden emergence of a long-drowned continent wouldn't just reshape coastlines, it could send shockwaves through ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years. Picture a thriving abyssal plain, home to blind shrimp and tube worms adapted to crushing pressures, suddenly exposed to sunlight and air. The shock alone could wipe out entire species, while sediment plumes from collapsing underwater cliffs might smother delicate coral reefs miles away. But the most immediate threat lies beneath the seabed itself, vast reservoirs of methane hydrates, frozen in ice like structures under high pressure. If disturbed by rising land, these deposits could release bursts of potent greenhouse gas accelerating climate change in ways we can't yet predict. Marine biologists warn that the ripple effects would extend far beyond the resurfaced zone. Migratory species like whales and tuna navigate by subtle magnetic cues from the ocean floor. A newly risen landmass could scramble their internal maps, stranding them in unfamiliar waters. Meanwhile, coastal fisheries dependent on upwelling currents might collapse if those currents are blocked by fresh barriers. Even seemingly small changes like the disappearance of a critical spawning ground or the intrusion of saltwater into newly formed lagoons could unravel food webs humans rely on for survival. The ocean isn't just water, it's a finely tuned machine, and throwing a continent-sized wrench into its gears could have consequences we're only beginning to fathom. Yet nature has a way of rebounding in unexpected ways. When Alaska's coastline rose during the 1964 earthquake, biologists documented a phenomenon they called ecological release, newly exposed land colonized by pioneering species at astonishing speeds. Barnacles and algae claimed rocks within weeks, followed by seabirds and even land plants carried by winds. a risen continent could become a real-time laboratory for studying how life reclaims territory, offering clues for restoring damaged ecosystems elsewhere. But there's a catch. Today's pioneers wouldn't be the same as those from the last ice age. Invasive species, microplastics, and industrial pollutants would compete with native organisms in ways never seen before. The ethical dilemma is stark. Every core sample drilled into a resurfaced plateau could reveal priceless climate data from ancient sediment layers, but each drill bit might also puncture fragile ecosystems struggling to establish themselves. Conservationists argue for slow science, treating these lands like Antarctica, protected zones where research happens only with minimal footprint. Yet the pressure to exploit would be immense, from mining companies eyeing rare minerals to governments desperate for arable land. The irony: we might destroy the very thing that makes risen continents valuable, their pristine state, before we fully understand them. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in nature's unpredictability. When Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, scientists assumed the barren ash fields would remain lifeless for decades. Instead, lupines and pocket gophers appeared within months, kickstarting recovery. A risen continent could defy expectations just as dramatically, sprouting forests where we anticipated deserts, or harboring extremophiles that rewrite biology textbooks. The only certainty that the Earth operates on its own timetable, and our role isn't to control the process, but to listen, adapt, and tread lightly on landscapes that have waited millennia for their second chance. The moment satellite images confirmed land where there was once only ocean, the world would erupt in a frenzy unlike anything we've seen. News channels would split screens between stunned scientists and breathless reporters, while social media feeds exploded with hashtags like #continentback and #Atlantis-rising. Conspiracy theorists wouldn't just knock, they'd kick down the door, claiming everything from government cover-ups to alien interventions. Imagine the headlines: "Lost continent returns," or "Was it hidden all along?" Or "Scientists baffled as ancient landmass defies geology." The story would dominate global discourse, blurring the line between fact and fantasy faster than you could say clickbait. Tourism operators would waste no time capitalizing on the chaos. Cruise lines would reroute ships to skirt the edges of the newly risen land, advertising once-in-a-lifetime views of Earth's rebirth. Adventure companies would offer guided hikes across the unstable terrain, despite warnings from geologists about shifting sediments and toxic gas vents. And let's not forget the souvenir shops already stocking T-shirts with slogans like, "I visited the 8th continent before it was cool." The rush would be so intense that countries might need to deploy coast guards to keep amateur explorers from trampling fragile ecosystems or sinking into hidden brine pools. Meanwhile, laboratories worldwide would enter full-scale scramble mode. Biologists would drool over the chance to study extremophiles suddenly exposed to sunlight after millennia in darkness. Climate scientists would race to model how the new landmass might alter ocean currents or weather patterns. And archaeologists, they'd be lobbying governments for exclusive access, terrified that treasure hunters might loot artifacts before they could be properly documented. The competition for research grants would turn cutthroat, with universities and private firms vying to plant their flags both metaphorically and literally on this scientific goldmine. But beneath the spectacle lies a deeper question. How would society process the existential whiplash of land returning from oblivion? Religions might reinterpret ancient flood myths as prophecies fulfilled. Economists would feverishly calculate the impact on global trade routes and resource markets, and philosophers would debate what it means for humanity's place in the world. If the Earth can cough up continents like dice from a cup, how permanent are any of our achievements? The ocean kept its secrets for millions of years, Now, as the water recedes, we're about to learn just how unprepared we are for the answers. History has a way of humbling us with sudden, violent reminders that the ground beneath our feet is far from permanent. Take the winter of 1811, when the Mississippi River Valley became the stage for one of the most powerful earthquake sequences ever recorded in North America. The New Madrid quake so strong they rang church bells in Boston and temporarily reversed the flow of the Mississippi, warped the landscape in ways that still baffle geologists today. One particularly dramatic shift birthed Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee as the earth split open and water rushed in to fill the void. Overnight, forests became seabeds and farmers awoke to find their fields transformed into wetlands. This wasn't just a local oddity, it was proof that continents can rewrite their own geography in a matter of hours. Half a world away, another kind of landmaking was unfolding beneath the waves. In 1963, off Iceland's southern coast, fishermen spotted a column of black smoke rising from the ocean. What began as a submarine volcanic eruption soon breached the surface, spewing molten rock that cooled into a brand new island christened Surtsey. Within weeks, this newborn landmass grew large enough to support its own microclimate, with steam vents creating rain showers that nurtured the first patches of moss. Scientists watched in real time as wind and waves carried seeds and insects to Surtsey's shores, kickstarting an ecosystem from scratch. Here was nature's ultimate demonstration. Land doesn't just disappear, it can also be born anew, often in the most unexpected places. These events share a common thread. They reveal Earth's restlessness, its refusal to stay still. The same forces that drowned Doggerland or Zealandia are still at work today, just on different timelines. When Alaska's coastline rose 30 feet during the 1964 earthquake, it didn't happen slowly. It was a single, violent lurch that left harbors stranded and docks hanging in midair. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean, the volcanic island of Stromboli has been continuously reshaping itself for thousands of years, its slopes crumbling into the sea only to be rebuilt by fresh eruptions. The lesson: our planet doesn't operate on human schedules. Change can come gradually over millennia or in the span of a single afternoon. What's startling is how often these transformations catch us off guard. When Anak Krakatau erupted in 2018, the volcano didn't just spew ash, it collapsed catastrophically, triggering tsunamis that killed hundreds. Yet from that destruction came new land, as fresh lava flows began rebuilding the island before scientists' eyes. Similarly, when Japan's 2011 earthquake shifted the seafloor, it didn't just move water. It altered Earth's axis by 6 inches and shortened the day by microseconds. These aren't isolated oddities. They're glimpses of the same planetary forces that could one day lift entire continents from the deep. The takeaway isn't just that land appears and disappears. It's that we're living on a planet that's perpetually reinventing itself. Whether through the slow creep of tectonic plates or the sudden violence of an eruption, Earth's surface remains as fluid as the oceans that cover it. And if history teaches us anything, it's that the next great geological surprise isn't a matter of if, but when. Scientists are racing to model what the future might hold for submerged continents, but the answers remain as fluid as the oceans themselves. Supercomputers crunch data from tectonic shifts and ancient climate patterns, simulating scenarios where Zealandia's highest ridges could breach the surface within the next 100,000 years, a blink in geological time. Other models suggest a more dramatic possibility: a sudden seismic surge along the Pacific Plate's fault lines, thrusting vast sections of seabed into daylight within centuries, not millennia. The uncertainty isn't due to lack of effort. It's because Earth's crust operates on its own chaotic clock. One compelling theory comes from researchers at New Zealand's Geological. who track Zealandia's gradual ascent using GPS sensors embedded in its few exposed peaks. Their data reveals an uplift rate of roughly 1 millimeter per year, slow by human standards, but over millennia enough to resurrect entire valleys. Contrast that with the Hikurangi margin, where the Pacific plate dives beneath Zealandia with enough force to trigger magnitude 8 earthquakes. A single catastrophic rupture here could lift coastal shelves by meters overnight, rewriting maps faster than textbooks could keep up. Then there's the wild card of climate change. As polar ice melts, the redistribution of Earth's mass could subtly alter tectonic pressures. Some glaciologists speculate that lighter ocean floors relieved of the weight from vanished ice sheets might rebound like a compressed spring, accelerating Zealandia's rise. Others warn of the opposite effect. Rising seas could drown the continent's remaining outcrops, buying time for slower geological processes. The debate hinges on variables no algorithm can yet pin down, from mantle convection currents to the unpredictable behavior of silica-rich rocks under stress. What's striking isn't just the range of predictions, it's how they echo past events we once thought impossible. Before the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake, few believed the seafloor could lurch upward 30 feet in minutes. Before Surtsey's birth in 1963, volcanoes weren't seen as landmakers, just destroyers. History humbles our assumptions, reminding us that geology's rulebook is still being written. Whether Zealandia's return is a slow-motion revelation or a planetary plot twist, one thing's certain: the ocean's grip on this hidden continent was always meant to be temporary. The real mystery isn't if it will rise, but how we'll meet it when it does. The moment we consider speeding up or slowing down, the rise of a submerged continent, we step into a moral minefield as complex as the geology itself. On one side are the visionaries who argue that human ingenuity should harness tectonic forces for the greater good. Imagine stabilizing coastlines by lifting land to offset rising seas, or unlocking rare minerals critical for green energy without deep-sea mining's ecological toll. Proponents point to precedents like the Netherlands land reclamation, where human intervention shaped nature to sustain civilization. But here's the catch: unlike polders built inch by inch, resurrecting a continent would mean tampering with forces we barely understand. One miscalculation could trigger chain reactions, disrupting ocean currents that regulate global weather or awakening dormant fault lines with catastrophic quakes. Opposing this are conservationists who liken geoengineering a continent to performing brain surgery with a bulldozer. The ocean floor isn't a blank slate, it's a living archive, home to extremophiles and ecosystems adapted to millennia of darkness. Accelerating uplift might vaporize these unique habitats before we've even documented them. Worse, it could unleash buried threats, ancient viruses preserved in permafrost, or methane reservoirs that, if disturbed, might turbocharge climate change. The irony: in trying to fix one crisis, we might ignite another. The debate echoes climate geopolitics, but with a twist. Unlike carbon emissions, a shared problem resurfacing land would create instant winners and losers. A risen Zealandia could benefit New Zealand with new territory, while disrupting Pacific currents that nourish fisheries from Chile to Japan. Meanwhile, nations lacking resources to engineer such projects might watch helplessly as others redraw the planet's physical and political map. Indigenous groups add another layer, arguing that these lands aren't just real estate but ancestral domains. For Maori, accelerating Zealandia's return could be sacrilege, a violation of tapu's sacred balance. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't whether we can intervene, but whether we should. History warns us that Earth systems resist brute force solutions. When engineers tried to control Mississippi floods with levees, they starved wetlands that once absorbed storm surges. When we diverted rivers for agriculture, we drained seas like the Aral into dust. A continent's rebirth offers a rare chance to break this cycle, to proceed with humility rather than hubris. The ocean kept these lands hidden for good reason. As we stand on the brink of playing gods with geology, we do well to ask, just because we might lift a continent, does it mean we ought to? The clock is ticking for governments and scientists to draft a playbook for the unimaginable, because when a continent resurfaces, hesitation won't be an option. Picture this: a sudden geological upheaval exposes miles of previously submerged land, and within hours, coastal nations are scrambling to deploy disaster teams, secure unstable terrain, and protect priceless artifacts from looters. The chaos would make hurricane responses look orderly by comparison. This isn't science fiction, it's a scenario the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction has quietly included in its long-term planning, dubbed Operation Seabed Rise. Their worst-case simulation involves everything from toxic gas leaks from disturbed sediment layers to refugee crises as displaced communities flock to the new land. The takeaway: the ocean won't send a courtesy memo before it coughs up a continent. But disaster response is just the first hurdle. Heritage preservation presents a minefield of its own. Imagine archaeologists racing against time to document a resurfaced Mesolithic campsite before seawater evaporates from fragile artifacts, causing wood and bone to crumble to dust. Or consider the legal nightmare of deciding who oversees cultural relics should Maori elders govern Zealandia's exposed carvings, or an international consortium. The 2001 UNESCO Convention on Underwater Cultural Heritage offers some framework, but it never accounted for landmasses leaping back into existence. Teams are already testing solutions like digital salvage drones that can 3D map ruins in minutes, creating backups before physical recovery begins. Still, the stakes are dizzying. One misstep could erase millennia of history in a single afternoon. The wild card lies in collaboration, or the lack of it. While NASA and ESA share protocols for asteroid threats, no equivalent exists for risen continents. Geologists in New Zealand might spot early uplift signs, but without real-time data swaps with Indonesian seismologists or European coastal engineers, warnings could arrive too late. Some progress is emerging. The Pacific Rim Coalition, a little-known alliance of coastal nations, now includes submerged land re-emergence in its annual drills. Their most creative tactic: pre-stocking shipping containers with modular labs and preservation gear, stationed near potential hotspots like the Sunda Shelf or the Lord Howe Rise. Deploy them within 72 hours and scientists gain a foothold before the gold rush begins. Yet readiness isn't just about gear, it's about rethinking borders. The Law of the Sea Treaty grants nations rights to submerged continental shelves, but says nothing about what happens when those shelves become dry land overnight. Draft proposals now circulating in diplomatic circles suggest treating resurfaced zones like Antarctica, internationally managed preserves until ecological and cultural assessments are complete. But try telling that to a mining conglomerate eyeing freshly exposed rare earth deposits, or a climate-stricken nation desperate for new territory. The real test won't be technological, it'll be whether humanity can prioritize knowledge over conquest when the ultimate blank slate appears. Perhaps the most urgent preparation isn't logistical but philosophical. How do we steward land that predates human memory? Indigenous groups from the Maori to the Tamil have oral histories that could guide preservation if we're willing to listen. Marine biologists whisper about de-extinction parks on risen lands where revived Ice Age flora might reclaim their ancestral soils, and ethicists warn against repeating the mistakes of colonial land grabs, urging a model where exploration serves understanding, not exploitation. The ocean spent epochs sculpting these hidden worlds. As they awaken, our task isn't just to react, but to reimagine what it means to walk where no human has tread for thousands of years. Imagine slipping on a VR headset and suddenly standing on the windswept plains of Doggerland 8,000 years ago, watching herds of aurochs thunder past as Mesolithic hunters weave through birch forests that haven't seen sunlight in millennia. This isn't just fantasy. With today's augmented and virtual reality tech, we're on the brink of resurrecting lost continents not as dusty museum dioramas, but as fully immersive worlds where every rustling leaf and shifting tide feels real. Companies like Time Looper are already partnering with archaeologists to recreate historical sites in VR, from Roman marketplaces to Civil War battlefields. Now apply that same tech to Zealandia's submerged mountains or the drowned river valleys of Cumri Kingdom, and you've got something revolutionary, a way to explore Earth's greatest mysteries without risking a single footprint on these fragile, newly risen landscapes. The magic lies in the data. LiDAR scans of the North Sea floor have already mapped Doggerland's sunken topography down to individual riverbeds, while sonar surveys of Zealandia reveal ancient ridges that could be digitally resurfaced with startling accuracy. Pair these datasets with paleobotany records showing which plants thrived there. Add AI that simulates period-accurate wildlife based on fossil evidence, and suddenly you're not just looking at a model, you're wandering a living ecosystem. Universities like Stanford are already experimenting with this, using VR to let students walk through digitally reconstructed Mayan cities. But continents take it further, blending geology with storytelling. Picture an AR overlay on your smartphone camera as you hike New Zealand's coast, revealing how the same rocks beneath your feet stretch underwater for hundreds of miles as part of Zealandia's hidden spine. For educators, the implications are staggering. Instead of memorizing stale facts about plate tectonics, students could witness the process firsthand, standing on a virtual shoreline as an earthquake rips through the crust, watching in real time as the ground lurches upward to form new land. Museums could ditch static displays for interactive dives, where visitors pilot ROVs over digital recreations of submerged ruins, collecting artifacts that trigger holographic explanations from avatar archaeologists. Even tourism transforms. Why visit a generic beach when you could snorkel over a VR-enhanced coral reef that, with the tap of a dive mask, morphs to show how that same spot looked when it was part of a prehistoric savanna? The tech isn't just about spectacle, it's a preservation tool. Rising continents will face immediate threats from erosion, looters, and invasive species. High-resolution VR scans created during initial surveys become digital time capsules, ensuring that even if a site degrades, its details survive for future study. Projects like the University of Southampton's virtual tutors have already proven this approach, using 3D models to preserve crumbling medieval shipwrecks. Now scale that up to an entire landscape, and you've got a fail-safe against time itself. Yet the most profound impact might be cultural. For indigenous communities like the Maori, VR could breathe life into oral histories, letting elders walk their ancestors' submerged homelands and share stories in the very landscapes where they unfolded. Imagine a Maori grandmother guiding her granddaughter through a digital Re-emergence, pointing out virtual fishing grounds her own grandparents described but never saw. This isn't just technology, it's time travel, reconciliation, and the unbroken thread of memory all woven together. The irony is delicious. After millennia underwater, these lost continents might first return not as rock and soil, but as pixels and light. And that's okay, because sometimes seeing is the first step toward understanding. As the lines between archaeology and adventure blur, we're not just exploring the past. We're previewing a future where every smartphone could hold the keys to forgotten worlds. When we ask experts what the resurgence of a submerged continent might mean for humanity, their answers span from cautious warnings to electrifying possibilities. Dr. Lisa McNeil, a marine geologist at the University of Southampton, stresses the seismic risks lurking beneath these geological rebirths. Lifting an entire landmass isn't like flipping a switch, she explains. The crust doesn't move smoothly, it fractures. We could see decades of increased earthquake activity as the planet adjusts to the new weight distribution. She points to historical precedents like the 1815 New Madrid quakes, where the Mississippi River Valley became a seismic battleground after subtle crustal shifts. The lesson: Earth's patience is infinite, but its adjustments are often violent. Contrast that with the perspective of Dr. Rangi Tiwata, a Maori archaeologist specializing in oral histories. For him, the return of a land like Zealandia isn't just a geological event, it's a cultural homecoming. Our ancestors spoke of Te Reu a Moi as a living ancestor, not a lost continent, he notes. If it rises, it won't be discovered, it'll be reintroduced. He envisions a revival of traditional navigation techniques to explore resurfaced coastlines, blending Western science with indigenous knowledge to interpret artifacts and ecosystems. The potential for healing is profound. Imagine descendants of displaced Pacific communities reclaiming ancestral lands swallowed by the sea centuries ago. Historians like Dr. Elena Perez Garcia offer a middle ground, examining parallels from Doggerland's drowning 8,000 years ago. She sees patterns that could guide modern responses. Societies back then adapted by migrating or innovating building boats, shifting diets, she says. Today, we'd face similar choices, but with satellites and international law complicating the picture. Her research into submerged Neolithic sites suggests that resurfaced lands could rewrite trade route histories, revealing prehistoric connections between cultures we never knew interacted. A single excavated tool or pottery shard might prove that ancient Britain and Scandinavia shared more than just a land bridge. They shared ideas, the consensus among these voices. Curiosity and preparation must go hand in hand. Dr. McNeil urges governments to fund early warning systems for seismic activity near potential uplift zones, while Dr. Tiwata advocates for Indigenous oversight to protect cultural heritage from exploitation. Dr. Perez Garcia bridges both views, proposing slow archaeology protocols that prioritize preservation over haste. Together, their insights paint a roadmap: monitor the Earth's whispers, honor the past's echoes, and above all, stay humble. The ocean didn't surrender these lands lightly, and we shouldn't rush to claim them without listening to what they have to say. The ocean floor hides countless ridges, plateaus, and vast mountain ranges, but not every underwater feature is a lost continent waiting to be rediscovered. Telling the difference between genuine continental remnants and ordinary seabed formations takes more than just excitement. It demands cold, hard evidence. Take the Bermuda Triangle's infamous Bimini Road, for instance, a line of submerged limestone blocks that conspiracy theorists once claimed were paved streets of Atlantis. Detailed geological analysis later revealed they were perfectly natural beach-rock fractures shaped by tides and time. This is the critical divide, where pop culture sees ancient ruins, science sees the fascinating but mundane workings of Earth's processes. True submerged continents share specific traits that set them apart. First, their rock composition matches continental crust, granite and sedimentary layers instead of the dense basalt that makes up most ocean floors. Zealandia, for example, has granite outcrops identical to those found in Australia, proving its continental pedigree. Second, they're thick, often miles deeper than surrounding seabed, with geological structures like fault lines and basins that mirror above-ground continents. Finally, they show clear signs of having been above water. Fossilized pollen, river channels, and coal seams all point to a sunken past. Compare that to something like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive underwater mountain chain, yes, but one formed by volcanic activity along tectonic boundaries, never part of a larger landmass. The line between science and speculation gets blurriest with microcontinents, small, isolated fragments like Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. These aren't full-fledged continents, but they're not mere seamounts either. Their hybrid nature fuels debate. Are they lost puzzle pieces of supercontinents like Gondwana, or just unusually thick oceanic plateaus? Here, technology becomes the referee. Advanced gravity mapping can detect subtle density differences, while zircon crystals' tiny mineral time capsules reveal whether a rock formed in shallow waters or deep ocean. When researchers found ancient zircon grains on Mauritius beaches, traceable to a buried landmass nearby, it was a eureka, a moment not proof of a mythical Kumari-kingdom, but of a real fragment that broke free from Madagascar millions of years ago. Then there's the wild card of human psychology. We're wired to see patterns, faces in clouds, cities in sonar shadows. The Yonaguni monument off Japan's coast perfectly embodies this. Its stair-like terraces and right angles scream human-made at first glance. Yet most geologists attribute its geometry to sandstone fracturing along natural bedding planes, with maybe some minor human modification. The takeaway: extraordinary claims don't just need evidence, they need to rule out ordinary explanations first. The most compelling case for restraint comes from history itself. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists trumpeted the discovery of Unravel, a hypothetical sunken continent in the Arctic. Decades later, better data showed it was just extended continental shelf, still geologically significant, but no Atlantis. These corrections aren't failures, they're science working as it should. Every dismissed myth tightens the criteria, sharpening our ability to recognize the real deal when it surfaces. After all, Zealandia wasn't confirmed overnight. It took 20 years of peer-reviewed papers to upgrade it from interesting possibility to Earth's 8th continent. So next time you hear a headline about a lost civilization rising from the deep, listen for the follow-up, the quiet but crucial details that separate groundbreaking discovery from wishful thinking. The ocean's greatest truths aren't hidden in whispers of the past, but in the meticulous language of rock samples, seismic surveys, and the slow, unglamorous work of proving what's really down there. What would you do if you stepped onto a shoreline that hadn't seen sunlight in 8,000 years? Would you scan the horizon for the ruins of lost cities, or kneel to inspect the soil for fossils of creatures long extinct? The moment a submerged continent rises, it becomes more than just land. It transforms into the ultimate exploration puzzle, a blank page scribbled with Earth's secrets. Some would rush to mine its untouched mineral wealth, from rare earth metals to pockets of methane hydrate that could power entire nations. Others would prioritize archaeology, delicately brushing sediment from tools and hearths left behind by ancient hands. But the real treasure might be hidden in the smallest details: pollen grains trapped in mudstone, revealing what plants thrived there before the waves came, or layers of volcanic ash that rewrite our timeline of prehistoric eruptions. Consider the thrill of discovery that gripped researchers when Antarctica's dry valleys revealed mummified seals, perfectly preserved in the cold for centuries. Now imagine that same rush, but on a scale 1,000 times grander, a continent-sized time capsule where every pebble could tell a story. Marine biologists would race to study extremophile microbes suddenly exposed to air, organisms that evolved under crushing pressure and eternal darkness. Geneticists might uncover DNA fragments in submerged peat bogs, offering glimpses of species we've never catalogued. And climate scientists, they'd pore over sediment cores like detectives, piecing together how Earth's weather systems behaved when this land was last above water. The data could refine our climate models, helping predict future shifts with unprecedented accuracy. Yet the most profound searches might not involve tools or labs at all. Indigenous communities like New Zealand's Maori or India's Tamil could walk resurfaced lands their ancestors only spoke of in oral histories, bridging gaps between legend and lived experience. Picture a Maori elder tracing their fingertips over petroglyphs, carved into Zealandia's rock symbols that match those found in their sacred stories, finally grounding myth in physical proof. Or consider the Tamil people, whose tales of Kumari Kandam describe advanced technologies and vast libraries. Even if no such structures were found, the very act of standing on that land would affirm a cultural memory stretching back further than written records. Then there are the mysteries we haven't even thought to ask about. Submerged continents could harbor geological oddities, caves sealed for millennia, now ripe with mineral formations unlike anything on the surface. Underground aquifers might gush pristine water, untouched by modern pollution. And let's not forget the possibility of shadow ecosystems, a species that adapted to underwater darkness only to find themselves thrust into sunlight, sparking evolutionary experiments in real time. The ocean didn't just hide these lands, it transformed them, and we have no idea what that process created. So the next time you gaze at the sea, remember, the greatest discoveries aren't always in the stars or deep space. They might be lying in wait beneath the waves, ready to rise when the Earth decides the time is right. And when that day comes, the real question won't be what we find, but whether we're wise enough to recognize its